Sometimes life feels normal. You walk down the street, go to work, talk to friends, and everything seems fine. But then, out of nowhere, someone disappears. Just like that. No warning, no clue. Families are left searching, hoping, waiting. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. And still, nothing. The questions never stop. What happened? Where did they go? Why did no one see it coming? Today we're going to look at 3 of these disappearances. 3 people who vanished, leaving a space no one could fill. Laurie Partridge, Richard Lins, and Glenn Pennie. Each story is strange, each story is sad, and none of them have answers. If you've ever been drawn to these mysteries, help us search for answers. Like, subscribe, and share. Someone watching might hold the clue that finally brings closure. Laurie Partridge was a lively, bright teenager living in California. She had friends she had grown up with, and a boyfriend she had been with for 3 years. Then her family made a big move. They packed up their lives and moved across the country to Spokane, Washington. Laurie was only 17, and the move left her heartbroken. She missed her friends, her school, and the life she knew. She struggled to adjust to the new city and a new high school. Her boyfriend tried to stay in touch, even visiting her to cheer her up. But Laurie had to face a new life on her own. It was a fresh start, but it was hard, and she felt the weight of leaving everything familiar behind. At first, Laurie found Spokane strange and a little lonely. The streets, the school, even the weather felt different from California. Joel E. Ferris High School was big, and she didn't know many people. Classes felt dull compared to what she was used to, and she missed the comfort of familiar faces. But Laurie tried to make the best of it. She joined the school newspaper and the drill team. She got an after-school job at a local movie theater. Slowly, she started meeting new friends and getting used to her surroundings. It wasn't easy, and she still thought about California often. But Laurie was trying. She wanted to fit in and build a life where she now lived. Laurie's parents could see how much she missed California. They wanted to help her feel at home in Spokane, but they understood her sadness. To lift her spirits, they arranged for her boyfriend from California to visit. Seeing someone she trusted and loved helped Laurie feel a little less alone. Her parents also offered her a choice. If she really wanted, she could move back to California to finish her senior year with her friends. But Laurie surprised them. She said no. She wanted to stay in Spokane and make this new place her home. It wasn't easy, but Laurie was determined to try. She was ready to face the challenges of her new life. Laurie slowly started to make Spokane feel like home. She threw herself into school activities, joining the Ferris High School newspaper. Writing gave her a way to express herself and meet new friends. She also joined the drill team, practicing routines and performing at school events. The busy schedule kept her mind occupied and helped her feel part of the community. Around this time, Laurie met a local boy, and they began dating. Their relationship grew quickly, and her parents were happy that she had found someone kind who shared her values. For the first time since moving, Laurie felt a sense of belonging. Life was still different from California, but it was starting to feel like hers. Even as Laurie built a new life at school, she stayed close to her family. She spent time with her younger siblings, teaching them songs on her guitar and helping with schoolwork. Music had always been important to her, and she found comfort in writing stories and keeping a journal. Laurie also leaned on her faith, attending church and finding strength in her beliefs. These routines gave her a sense of purpose and stability. Her family noticed how much she was growing into her own person, while still caring deeply for those around her. Laurie was finding balance between school, friends, her hobbies, and family. It seemed like she was finally settling into her life in Spokane. One December day, Laurie's father gave her a special gift, 2 tickets to see the Beach Boys in concert. Laurie was thrilled. She had loved their music for years, and this was something she had been dreaming about. The concert was just a few days away, and she could hardly wait. She talked about it non-stop with her friends and her new boyfriend. It wasn't just a show to her. It felt like a celebration of the life she was building in Spokane. Laurie planned every detail, from what she would wear to how she would get there. For a moment, all her worries seemed to fade, replaced by pure excitement and joy. On the morning of December 4th, 1974, Laurie woke up feeling a bit uncomfortable. She had some cramps and didn't feel quite like herself. Still, she planned to go to school as usual. She got dressed, ate breakfast, and checked her bag for books and homework. Even with the discomfort, she was determined not to let it slow her down. The thought of her classes, friends, and the busy day ahead kept her going. Laurie was used to pushing through little aches and pains. She kissed her siblings goodbye and waved to her parents as they left for work. It seemed like any normal day, but it would turn out to be anything but. Around noon, Laurie started feeling more uncomfortable from her cramps. She decided to call her parents to see if they could give her a ride home from school. Her mom and dad were both busy in meetings and couldn't come right away. They told her to take it easy for a while and, if she needed, to catch the school bus later. Laurie understood, but she still didn't want to wait around feeling unwell. She thanked them and hung up, thinking of a way to get some relief. It seemed simple enough, just a normal day with a small problem, but it set the stage for the events that would follow. A little while later, Laurie spotted her sister Cindy in the school library. She waved and went over to say hi. They talked for a few minutes, laughing about small things and sharing stories from class. Laurie mentioned that her cramps were still bothering her. She thought about the bus, but then an idea came to her. Maybe a walk home would help. Moving around a bit, getting some fresh air, it might ease the discomfort. She told Cindy her plan and started preparing to leave. It seemed harmless, just a short walk of a little over 2 miles. Laurie felt hopeful that the walk would help her feel better. Laurie left the school and began walking along South 37th Street. The air was crisp and the afternoon sun cast long shadows on the pavement. She kept her pace steady, thinking about how the walk might ease her cramps. The streets were familiar yet quiet, lined with houses spaced just far enough apart that she felt a little alone. As she turned onto Havana Avenue, the neighborhood changed, with larger yards, open fields, and a few horse pastures. Laurie walked carefully, noticing the details around her, the trees, the fences, the occasional car passing by. It was just a normal walk home, a small journey through a world that felt safe and ordinary. As Laurie continued down Havana Avenue, neighbors spotted her along the way. Some waved from their yards, seeing her familiar figure walking steadily. Others noticed her from windows as she passed by, her backpack swinging gently at her side. People recognized her from school and the neighborhood, and everything seemed normal. Laurie greeted a neighbor with a small smile, and they returned a friendly wave. It all appeared like an ordinary afternoon, with a teenager making her way home. No one suspected that this would be the last time she would be seen. She moved past houses and lawns, chatting briefly with the wind and the quiet street, unaware that something terrible was about to shatter this calm. As Laurie walked further, the familiar houses began to thin out. Lawns turned into open lots, and small fields appeared where horses grazed quietly. The street grew quieter, and fewer people were around. The friendly waves and smiles from neighbors became memories behind her. The sound of her footsteps on the pavement seemed louder now, echoing in the emptiness. Trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the late afternoon sunlight stretched long shadows across the ground. It was still peaceful, even pretty, but the sense of being watched faded. Laurie kept moving, unaware that she was leaving behind the safety of familiar eyes and stepping into a part of town where she might not be seen again. As Laurie moved along the quiet stretch, one neighbor later reported seeing something unusual. A white man, in his 40s or 50s, appeared near her. He was standing by a white truck parked at the side of the road, its door darkened, maybe from shadow or paint. From a distance, it didn't seem threatening at first. The man glanced toward Laurie a few times, shifting slightly as if waiting or watching. She didn't notice him, or maybe she thought he was just another passerby. The moment was brief, almost easy to dismiss, but in hindsight, this sighting was the first sign that something was out of place on a walk that had started so ordinary and calm. Not long after, another report added a chilling detail. A witness claimed a green Pinto had been following Laurie along the road. From a distance, it seemed like a normal car passing by, but something about the timing felt off. Later, at a convenience store along her route, the same witness, or someone else who saw the scene, said they spotted a teenage girl in the back seat of the Pinto. She appeared unconscious, slumped over, though it was hard to be certain from outside the car. The sight was brief, just a moment, but it left a lasting unease. What had started as a simple walk home was now shadowed by fear and unanswered questions. Evening came, and Laurie still hadn't returned home. Her parents started to worry. They checked the usual spots she might have stopped: friends' houses, the local store, even the small park along her route. Nothing. Calls to classmates came up empty, and no one had seen her since she left school. Her father drove slowly along South 37th Street and Havana Avenue, scanning for any sign of Laurie. Her mother stayed on the phone, calling neighbors and friends, her voice tight with concern. Every minute felt heavier than the last. What should have been a short, ordinary walk had stretched into a night of growing fear. Laurie was missing, and her family had no answers. As the night wore on, Laurie's parents realized they needed help. Around 9 p.m., they called the Spokane Police Department to report her missing. They described everything: her appearance, what she was wearing, the route she normally walked, and the details of the day. Officers took notes carefully, asking questions about her friends, habits, and any possible reasons she might have left on her own. The parents felt a mix of hope and dread, wanting someone to find her quickly, but fearing the worst. Police promised to start checking neighborhoods, speak with witnesses, and keep an eye out for Laurie. The reality was harsh. This was no longer a simple delay. Their daughter had vanished. At first, the police considered the possibility that Laurie had run away. Moving across the country at 17 was a big change, and officers thought maybe she had left because she missed her California home. They suggested she might be staying with friends or trying to get back home. But Laurie's parents quickly protested. This wasn't like her. She loved her family, her new school, and the friends she had made. She had no history of running off. They insisted that something was wrong, that Laurie wouldn't just vanish on her own. The officers noted their concerns, but still had to consider every option. The idea of a simple runaway didn't sit right with anyone. Laurie's father, Kenneth, couldn't wait for answers. He decided to retrace her steps himself, starting from the school and walking the route she usually took home. He spoke with neighbors along South 37th Street and Havana Avenue, asking if anyone had seen her or noticed anything unusual. Some remembered waving at her. Others mentioned the quiet streets and passing cars. Kenneth visited the convenience store, hoping to find someone who had seen her or the green Pinto. Each conversation left him frustrated and anxious. Every detail mattered, but nothing gave a clear lead. He kept walking, searching, and asking, desperate to piece together the last moments of Laurie's day. As Kenneth dug deeper, he noticed gaps in the investigation. Some early leads, like the Beach Boys concert tickets Laurie had been excited about, weren't fully followed up by the police. He worried that small clues, even those that seemed minor, might hold answers. Witness reports about cars, people along her route, and her unusual walk that day were recorded but not always acted on quickly. Kenneth felt a growing frustration. Every hour mattered, and details were slipping through cracks. The authorities were thorough in some ways, but slow in others. Meanwhile, Laurie remained missing, and those gaps left a gnawing uncertainty for her family, who feared that the truth could be lost. Weeks after Laurie disappeared, Kenneth discovered something troubling about the Beach Boys concert tickets. The tickets Laurie's father had given her were confirmed as having been used, but Laurie never showed up. Someone had entered the venue in her place, or perhaps the tickets were taken without anyone noticing. This small detail set off alarms in Kenneth's mind. It suggested that Laurie hadn't simply wandered off. Something more sinister might have happened. The thought of foul play grew stronger with each passing day. Questions piled up. Who had the tickets? Why didn't Laurie attend the concert she'd been eagerly anticipating? These uncertainties made the disappearance even harder to accept for her family and friends. As the weeks turned into months, Laurie's family grew desperate. They hired private investigators, hoping someone outside the official investigation could uncover clues. They even consulted psychics, grasping at any lead that might point to Laurie. Days were spent making calls, following tips, and revisiting streets she had walked. Sleep became scarce, meals rushed, and the constant anxiety took a toll on everyone. Each small hope raised their spirits for a moment, only to be crushed by dead ends and silence. The lack of progress wore them down, leaving Kenneth and Laurie's mother drained and frustrated. Every unanswered question deepened the pain, and the absence of clear leads made their heartbreak almost unbearable.
As time passed, law enforcement explored every possible lead. One unsettling thought arose. Could a known serial killer be involved? Ted Bundy, who had committed crimes in several states, crossed investigators' minds. It seemed plausible at first, given the nature of Laurie's disappearance. Authorities checked timelines, locations, and patterns, considering Bundy's presence in the region. Laurie's family, already overwhelmed by fear, felt a chill at the possibility. But after careful review, investigators concluded Bundy was not connected to this case. Though the suspicion was raised and then dismissed, it highlighted just how complex and disturbing the situation had become. Laurie's disappearance remained baffling, with answers still out of reach. Investigators then turned their attention to local men who seemed suspicious. John Richard Hurley and Stanley Burnson were both questioned, their movements and histories examined. Hurley didn't fit the timeline or profile, and officers eventually ruled him out. Burnson, however, drew more attention. He lived near areas Laurie walked, and his past included troubling behavior and minor criminal activity. While nothing directly linked him to Laurie, his proximity and record made him a person of interest. Police carefully watched his movements, interviewed people who knew him, and tried to piece together his connection to the neighborhood. For Laurie's family, the thought that someone nearby could be involved made the case feel even more urgent and frightening. Police also focused on the green Pinto reported by witnesses. They canvassed the area, asking neighbors, store clerks, and anyone who might have seen the car that afternoon. Officers checked registration records, tried to track the owner, and looked for similar vehicles in nearby towns. Despite their efforts, no concrete evidence emerged. The Pinto sightings remained just that, claims and memories from witnesses, but nothing that could definitively link the car to Laurie's disappearance. Each lead brought a mix of hope and frustration. Investigators were convinced they were close at times, only to hit a wall. For Laurie's family, the lack of progress was agonizing, leaving the mystery of the green Pinto unresolved and haunting. As the investigation dragged on, some began to wonder if Laurie's disappearance could be connected to other local cases. David Willoughby and Marla Jean Thomas had vanished under strange circumstances in nearby areas, and the similarities caught the attention of detectives. They examined timelines, locations, and witness accounts, looking for any overlap or pattern. Nothing concrete appeared, but the speculation added to the anxiety surrounding Laurie's case. For her family, the thought that she might be part of a series of incidents was terrifying. Each potential connection raised questions and fears, but no solid evidence linked the cases. The mystery only deepened, leaving more shadows than answers. One of the troubling details that haunted Laurie's family was her missing possessions. Her purse, with money, identification, and personal items, was never recovered. Investigators scoured her route, questioned neighbors, and even searched nearby fields and alleys, but the bag was nowhere to be found. The only item that surfaced was the Beach Boys concert tickets, confirmed used but disconnected from Laurie herself. This absence made the case even more confusing. If Laurie had simply run away, why leave her purse behind? Every missing item, every small detail, added to the sense that something more sinister had occurred. The disappearance of her belongings left a hole in the trail investigators needed. The years that followed were filled with pain for Laurie's parents. The grief of losing their daughter weighed heavily on every part of their lives. Arguments and sadness crept in, and the strain of decades without answers took its toll. Eventually, the tension led to their divorce, each seeking a way to cope with the loss in their own way. Both remarried, trying to rebuild parts of their lives, but the shadow of Laurie's disappearance never left them. Every holiday, every family event carried a quiet ache. Memories of Laurie lingered, and the questions of what had happened haunted them continuously. Even with new beginnings, the heartbreak of losing their daughter remained. Over the years, authorities tried to match Laurie to unidentified bodies found across the country. 23 Jane Does were carefully compared to her description, but none were her. Each time a match was ruled out, brought a mix of relief and renewed frustration. Laurie remained missing, unaccounted for, a ghost in the records and reports. Her family clung to hope with every new lead, every tip that came in, but nothing ever brought her home. The long list of exclusions only deepened the mystery. Decades passed, and Laurie's disappearance became a case marked by uncertainty, with every closed door leaving her loved ones grasping for answers that never came. Even after nearly 50 years, Laurie's family never stopped searching for answers. They kept her story alive, speaking to media, updating investigators, and reaching out to anyone who might have information. Old friends, former neighbors, and even strangers were contacted again, hoping that someone remembered something that had been overlooked. Each new lead, no matter how small, sparked a glimmer of hope. Her siblings and extended family held on to memories, keeping her presence in their lives despite the absence. Time passed, but the determination did not fade. Laurie's family refused to give up. Half a century later, their hearts still ache, yet they continued to hope that someday the truth will finally be revealed. Laurie Partridge's disappearance remains one of those cases that hangs in the air, unresolved and haunting. Even with years of investigation, interviews, and public attention, no clear answers have emerged. Her story has become a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that sometimes life can change in an instant with no explanation. People still talk about her, share theories, and search for clues, but the truth remains out of reach. For her family, friends, and community, the emptiness she left behind is a constant presence. The mystery continues to puzzle investigators and haunt those who loved her. Laurie's fate is unknown, leaving questions that may never be answered. From the quiet streets of Spokane in the 1970s, where Laurie vanished during a simple walk home, the story shifts decades and miles away. Now we find ourselves in a modern city bar late at night. The setting is different, bright lights, music, and chatter, but the silence that follows a disappearance feels hauntingly similar. Someone has gone missing here too, leaving friends and family confused and worried. The questions are the same. Where did they go? Why was no one aware? Though the city is different, the haunting silence of a disappearance echoes just like it did in Spokane all those years ago. Richard Lynn's 55 years old, stepped out of the Showboat Lounge in Redding just after 1 a.m. The neon sign flickered behind him as he squinted against the cool night air. He had spent the evening with friends, chatting, laughing, and having a few drinks. The streets were quiet, the usual hum of late-night traffic subdued. Richard pulled on his jacket and adjusted his hat, ready to head home. He waved to a passing car and walked toward his car in the nearly empty parking lot. Nothing seemed unusual, just a man finishing his night out. No one around guessed that this would be the last time he was seen alive, and the calm of the night would soon be shattered. Richard Lynn had lived a complicated life. At 55, he carried health issues that sometimes slowed him down. He struggled with alcohol, using drinks to ease stress and quiet his mind. Friends described him as balding, with a thick mustache that gave him a stern, almost serious look. He was often quiet, thoughtful, and sometimes brooding, weighed down by personal troubles he didn't share easily. Despite these challenges, he tried to keep some routines in place, working when he could and maintaining connections with those close to him. That night, leaving the bar, he seemed like any man finishing a late evening out, but beneath the surface, his life was full of tension and uncertainty. After leaving the Showboat Lounge, Richard walked down the quiet streets of Redding, the night cool against his face. His friends waved goodbye, assuming he'd get home safely soon. He moved at a steady pace, hands tucked into his jacket, occasionally glancing at the dim street lights overhead. Cars passed now and then, but the sidewalks were mostly empty. No one knew that this short walk would be the last time he was seen. His home remained out of reach, just blocks away, yet he never made it. The night swallowed him quietly, leaving friends and family with worry and confusion. Richard vanished into the darkness, and nothing after that confirmed where he went or what happened.
Richard's disappearance became even stranger because so many of his personal effects were left behind. His loyal dog stayed at home, pacing and whimpering, confused by the sudden absence of his owner. His wallet, keys, and other everyday items remained exactly where he had left them. There were no signs of a struggle inside the house, nothing that suggested he planned to go anywhere long-term.
Friends and family found this deeply unsettling. How could someone simply vanish, leaving everything familiar behind? The dog's anxious barking and the untouched belongings added a layer of worry and confusion, making it clear that Richard's disappearance was far from ordinary and that the answers might never be simple or easy to find. Some believed Richard might have been trying to reach Portland, Oregon that night. His estranged wife lived there, and although their relationship was strained, there had been discussions about meeting or reconciling. Friends and family wondered if he had decided to drive or even hitch a ride, but no evidence confirmed any movement toward the city. Gas stations along the route reported no sightings, and no toll or highway cameras captured him. It was a trail full of questions and dead ends. People clung to the idea that he had a destination in mind, hoping that understanding his intentions might explain the strange disappearance. But nothing proved he ever made it that far. Richard faced obstacles that made any long trip more complicated. His driver's license had been suspended, so using his car wasn't an option. That left public transportation, rides from strangers, or perhaps walking stretches between towns. Each possibility carried its own risks, especially late at night. Friends and family considered whether he might have tried to catch a bus or train, but ticket records showed nothing. Even if he had planned to travel, the lack of a vehicle made the journey uncertain and dangerous. These complications deepened the mystery. How had he planned to reach Portland without a car, and why did no one see him along the way? Another unusual detail about Richard added to the questions surrounding his disappearance. He held a valid pilot's license, which suggested he had the skill to fly himself if he had access to an aircraft. Yet he didn't own a plane, and there was no record of him renting or arranging to use one that night. Friends and family wondered if he might have had a secret plan, or if he simply carried the license as a hobby. The fact remained that despite his qualification, there was no evidence he took to the skies. This oddity only deepened the mystery. He had the means in theory, but nothing confirmed he acted on it. Authorities in Redding acted quickly once Richard was reported missing. Police organized searches throughout the city, focusing on the streets he was last seen on, the nearby neighborhoods, and the main routes out of town. Volunteers and friends joined, combing parks, alleys, and parking lots. Officers checked bus stops, public transport routes, and known hangouts. Despite the efforts and urgency, every lead seemed to fade. No sightings came in, no evidence surfaced, and his trail quickly went cold. The lack of clues frustrated both authorities and family. What had begun as a late-night walk or attempt to travel vanished into uncertainty, leaving a tense and empty search in its wake. Richard's sudden disappearance left his family in deep concern. The abruptness of it all, leaving home without wallet, keys, or even a coat, made them fear something more sinister than a simple night out gone wrong. Friends and relatives speculated about foul play, worried that he might have been targeted or harmed along the way. Every unanswered question added weight to their worry. They retraced his steps themselves, called every possible contact, and spoke to authorities repeatedly, but the lack of evidence offered no comfort. The uncertainty gnawed at them, creating sleepless nights and constant anxiety. Richard's absence cast a long shadow, leaving family and friends desperate for answers. Richard's health added another layer of worry to the mystery. He had type 2 diabetes, a condition he hadn't been managing properly, which made him more vulnerable to complications. Friends knew he often neglected medications and struggled to keep up with doctor visits. On top of that, he battled depression, weighed down by personal issues, estranged relationships, and ongoing frustrations in his life. These mental and physical challenges made his sudden disappearance even more alarming. Family and friends feared that something as simple as a misstep or accident could have serious consequences. His untreated conditions, combined with the late-night timing and lack of planning, made every day he remained missing feel more urgent and frightening. The night Richard disappeared, he wore a bright orange t-shirt and a red baseball cap with the name Axner stitched across the front. His blue jeans were faded and worn, and his thick mustache appeared lighter than the dark hair on his head. Friends later described him as looking slightly tired, but otherwise normal as he left the bar. The clothing and features became key details for anyone searching, small markers to identify him in the dark streets or on surveillance. Every description mattered, yet despite these clear identifiers, no one reported seeing him again. After Richard disappeared, some reports suggested he might have used a different name, Lindsay or Lindsay, while moving around the area. Friends and acquaintances mentioned hearing the names in casual conversation, but no one could confirm that he ever actively used them. Law enforcement followed up on the lead, checking records, calling contacts, and monitoring possible locations, but nothing concrete appeared. No sightings, no transactions, no calls matched the alternate names. It was a frustrating dead end, leaving the possibility open but unverified. The thought that he might have tried to hide his identity added another layer of mystery, deepening the uncertainty surrounding his disappearance. In the days following Richard's disappearance, the community joined in the search. Police canvassed streets near the Showboat Lounge, knocking on doors, checking alleyways, and speaking with anyone who might have seen him that night. Friends were questioned repeatedly, recounting small details and trying to remember anything unusual. Bar owners along his usual routes were asked to recall patrons leaving late at night, and local transportation hubs were scoured for anyone matching his description. Flyers were posted, and calls went out to the public for tips. Despite the effort and attention, no solid leads emerged. Each search offered hope, but time and uncertainty continued to widen the gap between Richard and those trying to find him. The investigation into Richard's disappearance quickly ran into obstacles. There was little evidence to follow. No footprints, no abandoned belongings, and no credible sightings after he left the bar. Witnesses were scarce. Even those who were out that night remembered little, their recollections vague and sometimes contradictory. As days turned into weeks, the trail grew colder. Time worked against the search, eroding memories and diminishing hope of catching fresh leads. Police checked every possibility, but the lack of concrete information left them frustrated. For Richard's family and friends, the passing days only deepened their anxiety. Each unanswered question seemed to widen the gap between the man they knew and the mystery of where he had gone. Richard's disappearance weighed heavily on his family. Every day brought reminders of his absence. The empty chair at the dinner table, the untouched belongings at home, the unanswered phone calls that would never come. Anxiety settled into their routines, turning simple moments into triggers for worry. Arguments flared over what had happened, fueled by fear and frustration. Friends tried to offer support, but nothing could fill the space Richard left behind. The uncertainty gnawed at everyone, and each day without answers intensified the strain. Life continued around them, but the missing presence cast a long shadow. They were left holding memories and questions, with no clarity and no closure, trapped in a cycle of worry that never seemed to ease. Richard's disappearance eventually drew the attention of local and regional media. Newspapers ran stories about the last known sighting outside the Showboat Lounge, and radio programs mentioned the search for the missing man. Flyers with his photo circulated, and social media posts spread the appeal for tips. For a short time, calls to the police increased as people reported potential sightings or passed along rumors. Yet most of these leads evaporated almost as quickly as they arrived. Nothing concrete ever came of the media attention. Friends and family watched as initial hope faded, realizing that publicity alone couldn't solve the mystery. Despite widespread coverage, Richard's trail remained cold, and the questions surrounding his disappearance persisted, leaving the public and his loved ones frustrated and anxious. As the investigation continued, authorities began to consider the possibility of foul play. The suddenness of Richard's disappearance, combined with the fact that he left behind his wallet, keys, and personal effects, raised concerns that he might have been abducted. Detectives looked at nearby streets, dark alleys, and transit routes for any signs of struggle or witnesses who might have seen something suspicious. They interviewed people who frequented the same bars, bus stops, and areas he might have passed through. Despite the concern, no direct evidence of a crime ever emerged. No threatening notes, no surveillance footage, no physical clues.
the theory of abduction remained plausible, yet unproven. For his family, the thought that someone might have intentionally harmed Richard added a grim weight to their worry, deepening the uncertainty and fear that had followed them from the first night he vanished. Alongside the abduction theory, investigators also considered the possibility that Richard had disappeared voluntarily. They asked whether he might have wanted to start over, to leave behind personal struggles, health worries, and strained relationships. Friends and family insisted that this seemed unlikely. Richard had never hinted at running away, and he had strong ties to his home and community. Police examined financial records, recent communications, and any signs of planning, such as packed belongings or messages to acquaintances, but found nothing. No bus or train tickets had been purchased. No phone calls suggested a planned departure. While the theory of a voluntary disappearance couldn't be completely dismissed, it seemed improbable. For those who loved him, the idea that he chose to vanish deliberately offered little comfort, raising even more questions about what truly happened that night. In the weeks and months after Richard vanished, police received a steady stream of tips from the public. Some came from neighbors who thought they'd seen someone matching his description, others from drivers who remembered a lone figure on the road late at night. Friends and distant acquaintances called in, recalling small conversations or unusual behaviors that might be relevant. Each tip was logged and investigated, but nearly all proved unhelpful. Sightings could not be confirmed, timelines didn't match, and evidence was missing. Some leads raised brief hope, only to collapse under scrutiny. For law enforcement, the volume of tips was both encouraging and frustrating. For Richard's family, it was exhausting. Every call or message stirred emotion, yet rarely brought clarity. Despite the public's efforts, the mystery deepened, leaving the man they were searching for still out of reach.
Years passed, and the trail of Richard Lintz grew colder. Searches were conducted, both by police and volunteers, but they yielded nothing substantial. Neighborhoods were revisited, tips checked, and public appeals renewed, yet every lead seemed to dissolve. Time eroded memories, witnesses moved away, and possible evidence faded or disappeared. The case shifted from active investigation to cold file, though occasional updates kept a spark of hope alive for family and friends. Each passing year made it harder to believe that answers would come, yet the absence only intensified the mystery. Richard remained missing, a man once known and seen, now reduced to questions, theories, and the empty spaces he left behind. Questions about Richard Lintz's disappearance continued to linger, unanswered and haunting. Had he been trying to reach Portland to see his estranged wife, or had something else occurred entirely? Did he vanish on his own, choosing to leave behind the life he knew, or had he been taken against his will? Every detail raised more questions than answers. The abandoned wallet, the untouched dog, the lack of sightings. Friends and family replayed possibilities endlessly, trying to reconstruct the night in their minds. Even investigators struggled to find clarity. Theories circulated, from voluntary disappearance to foul play, yet none could be confirmed. The uncertainty persisted, leaving a shadow over every memory of the man they knew. 17 years have passed since Richard Lintz disappeared, yet the case remains open and unresolved. Police files sit thick with notes, witness statements, and checked leads, but nothing has provided a definitive answer. Friends and family continue to wonder what happened that night outside the Showboat Lounge, haunted by the silence that followed. Theories, suspicions, and rumors circulate, but none can replace the certainty they crave. Richard's absence leaves a permanent void, both in the lives of those who loved him and in the community that once knew him. His disappearance has become a modern mystery, one that endures as a chilling reminder of how suddenly someone can vanish, leaving only questions behind. From the neon-lit streets of Redding in 2007, the story moves northwest to rural Oregon. There, a planned trip to claim an inheritance turned into another baffling disappearance.
Despite careful preparation, the individual never returned, leaving family and neighbors grasping for answers. The promise of wealth, plans laid in advance, and all precautions taken could not shield them from the uncertainty that followed. The quiet roads and dense forests became part of a new mystery, echoing the fear and confusion felt by those left behind. Even when we think we are ready, the unknown can still take hold. Glenn Pennie, 55, lived a quiet life in Polk County, southwest of Salem, Oregon. His days were steady and predictable, spent tending to property, running errands in the small town, and occasionally visiting neighbors. The rural setting suited him. The forests, fields, and open roads offered peace and routine. Friends described him as cautious, careful with plans, and methodical in his approach to life. He valued order and preparation, believing that being ready for anything would keep him safe. Yet, even in this controlled environment, the unexpected could intrude, and his seemingly calm life was about to face a mysterious disruption that would ripple through the community.
In the days before his departure, Glenn carefully prepared for the trip. He packed his bags with clothes, important documents, and snacks for the road, ensuring nothing essential was forgotten. He thought about his routines at home and made arrangements for his cat, asking a trusted neighbor to check in daily and provide care. Every detail was considered, from fuel stops to rest breaks, even the security of the coin collection during travel. Friends noted his meticulous nature, how he double-checked locks and confirmed schedules. Despite all his planning, there was an unspoken tension, a reminder that even the best preparations could not guarantee safety. Glenn was ready for the journey, yet the unknown waited quietly ahead. The night before leaving for California, Glenn made one final call to a close friend to confirm his travel plans. He discussed departure times, the route he intended to take, and what to do if he ran into delays. His tone was calm but deliberate, reflecting his careful approach to life and travel. The friend listened and offered reminders: double-check the car, take breaks, stay alert on the highways. Glenn reassured them that everything was arranged, from the cat's care to the security of important documents. It was a routine conversation, yet it carried an undercurrent of finality. By the end of the call, Glenn seemed ready, unaware that this ordinary preparation would soon become the last known trace of him. The next morning, October 4th, 2004, began quietly in rural Polk County, but soon turned alarming. Glenn never left his home as planned. The truck he intended to drive to California sat undisturbed in the driveway, keys inside as usual. Neighbors noticed nothing unusual at first. Routines in the area were slow and calm. But by midday, concern began to grow. Calls to his cell were unanswered, and attempts to reach him by email or messages failed. Friends and family, aware of his careful planning and punctual habits, sensed something was wrong. The meticulous preparation, the confirmed plans, and the expected departure all seemed ignored, replaced by an eerie stillness. Glenn had vanished, leaving no immediate clue, and the quiet morning became the first sign of a perplexing disappearance. By late morning, neighbors grew increasingly concerned about Glenn's absence. His usual morning routines, watering plants, tending to small chores, or checking the mailbox, were not happening. The quiet of the property felt off, unusual even for a rural setting where calm was normal. A neighbor who walked by glanced at the driveway and saw the truck still parked, exactly as it had been the night before. Attempts to see or call Glenn were unanswered, and little noises like the cat meowing or doors creaking provided no explanation. Concern turned to alarm, and a neighbor finally decided to call someone, family first, then authorities, reporting that something seemed wrong. The sense of worry quickly spread, marking the start of an urgent search for a man who had simply vanished without a trace. When authorities arrived at Glenn's property, they quickly began treating the situation as a possible missing person case. Officers checked the house thoroughly, noting that nothing appeared disturbed. Personal belongings, important documents, and his cell phone were all in place. Despite this, the sudden absence raised concern for foul play. Glenn had been careful, organized, and predictable, making his disappearance unusual. Neighbors were interviewed, and patrols canvassed the nearby area for any signs of disturbance, footprints, or unusual activity. Local roads and trails were examined, but no solid leads emerged. Family and friends were questioned, retracing his steps and routines, yet every answer seemed to circle back to the same unsettling truth. Glenn had simply vanished, leaving police with more questions than clues. Inside Glenn's home, everything appeared untouched, as if he had simply stepped out and never returned. His clothes were neatly folded, bags packed but untouched, and the documents for his California trip sat on the kitchen counter. Snacks and personal items remained where he had left them the night before, suggesting that the journey he had so carefully planned never even began. For investigators, the undisturbed home only deepened the mystery. The trip, meant to settle his father's estate, was interrupted before it even started, leaving behind more questions than answers about what had happened to Glenn Pennie.
Authorities launched an extensive search around Glenn's property, covering roughly 53 square miles of rural Oregon terrain. Officers combed through forests, fields, and nearby roads, checking trails, streams, and abandoned buildings. Drones and search teams scanned the area, hoping to spot any sign of Glenn, his vehicle, or evidence of his movements. Volunteers joined in, walking the landscape inch by inch, calling out his name and examining every possible hiding place. Despite the thorough coverage and countless hours of effort, nothing surfaced. No footprints, no discarded belongings, no disturbances in the foliage. Nothing suggested where he had gone. The wide-ranging search highlighted the isolation of the area and deepened the mystery. Even in a massive sweep, Glenn Pennie remained nowhere to be found, leaving the community and investigators with a sense of helplessness and disbelief. As days passed with no sign of Glenn, authorities began to consider the possibility of foul play. The meticulous planning, untouched belongings, and sudden absence suggested that something more sinister might have occurred. Investigators shifted focus from a voluntary disappearance to scenarios involving abduction or even homicide. Nearby roads, trails, and remote locations were scoured again, looking for evidence that could indicate a struggle or forced removal. Detectives interviewed family, neighbors, and anyone who might have had contact with Glenn, searching for inconsistencies or unusual encounters. Despite the new line of inquiry, no direct evidence emerged. The absence of clues only heightened concerns, leaving law enforcement and the community uneasy. What began as a baffling vanishing now carried the chilling possibility that Glenn had been taken against his will. Yet the truth remained hidden in the quiet rural landscape. Investigators soon turned their attention to potential financial motives. Glenn's upcoming inheritance was substantial, including multiple properties and a coin collection valued at over $1 million. Police considered whether someone might have known about the estate and targeted him for that reason. Family and acquaintances were questioned about disputes, recent arguments, or unusual behavior by anyone who might benefit from his absence. Bank records, property transfers, and communications were examined for irregularities or suspicious activity. While financial gain offered a plausible motive, no concrete evidence surfaced to link anyone to Glenn's disappearance. The wealth he stood to inherit became both a possible explanation and the source of concern, yet the mystery persisted. Even with this line of inquiry, the trail remained frustratingly cold, leaving his friends, family, and investigators to grapple with unanswered questions. Tensions within Glenn's family added another layer of complexity to the investigation. In the months leading up to his planned trip, he had disagreements with his brother, Dale, over aspects of the estate. Conversations reportedly grew heated, with discussions about property divisions and management of the valuable coin collection. Friends and relatives noticed the strain, though they never expected it to escalate into something more serious. Investigators questioned Dale and other family members, looking for inconsistencies or potential motives, but nothing definitive emerged. Disputes over money might explain friction, but they did not provide clear evidence linking anyone to Glenn's disappearance. The wealth he stood to inherit became both a possible explanation and a source of concern, yet the mystery persisted.
Even with this line of inquiry, the trail remained frustratingly cold, leaving his friends, family, and investigators to grapple with unanswered questions. Tensions within Glenn's family added another layer of complexity to the investigation. In the months leading up to his planned trip, he had disagreements with his brother, Dale, over aspects of the estate. Conversations reportedly grew heated, with discussions about property divisions and management of the valuable coin collection. Friends and relatives noticed the strain, though they never expected it to escalate into something more serious. Investigators questioned Dale and other family members, looking for inconsistencies or potential motives, but nothing definitive emerged. While disputes over money might explain friction, they did not provide clear evidence linking anyone to Glenn's disappearance. The arguments left a lingering unease, a reminder that even family conflicts could shadow a mystery that otherwise had no obvious resolution. In the weeks before his disappearance, Glenn had confided in a few close friends with a sense of unease. He mentioned that if anything unusual happened to him, they should pay attention to Dale. The comment was framed as caution rather than accusation, but it carried weight given the recent family disputes. Friends remembered the words clearly, replaying them after Glenn vanished, wondering whether he had sensed danger or simply voiced a worry born from stress over the estate. Investigators later noted these statements, questioning whether they reflected instinct, concern, or a hint of motive. Though the remark didn't point to proof, it added another layer of suspicion, a thread to consider in a case already tangled with uncertainty. The warning lingered, echoing in the minds of those closest to him. Investigators quickly focused on Dale, given the family tension and Glenn's prior warning. They traced his movements and confirmed that on the day of Glenn's disappearance, Dale was in Bandon, Oregon, several hours away from Polk County. Multiple witnesses, receipts, and phone records supported his location, creating a solid alibi. Police repeatedly checked and rechecked the information, interviewing friends, business contacts, and anyone who could corroborate the timeline. Each time, the evidence pointed away from him, and Dale was cleared of suspicion. Still, the earlier warning from Glenn lingered in conversations among friends and family, a shadow that raised questions even as law enforcement confirmed the brother's absence. Despite thorough verification, the case remained unresolved, leaving the mystery of Glenn's disappearance firmly in place. With Dale cleared, investigators turned their attention to the estate itself. Probate documents, bank accounts, and property records were carefully reviewed for anything unusual or suspicious. Each transaction, signature, and transfer was scrutinized to see if someone might have tried to benefit from Glenn's disappearance. Financial experts and detectives worked together, tracing the movement of funds and the status of properties, including the valuable coin collection. Yet, despite the detailed examination, nothing concrete emerged. No unauthorized access, no hidden agreements, no sudden transfers. Everything appeared in order. The thorough review provided reassurance that no foul play was evident in the estate, but it also deepened the frustration, leaving the disappearance unexplained and the questions lingering. Friends of Glenn offered insight that added another dimension to the mystery. They described him as careful, deliberate, and deeply rooted in his routines, someone unlikely to vanish without warning. Glenn valued preparation, checked details repeatedly, and rarely acted impulsively. Many noted that he had expressed excitement and even a sense of responsibility about the California trip, which seemed to make a voluntary disappearance improbable. Conversations, letters, and phone calls he had made in the days before he was last seen reflected planning and forward thinking rather than restlessness or a desire to escape. Friends worried that something had happened to him against his will, their concern deepening because his personality and habits clashed with the idea that he could simply walk away, leaving all his careful plans and possessions behind. As the years passed, Glenn Pennie's disappearance settled into cold case status. Investigators revisited files periodically, hoping for new tips or overlooked details, but the trail remained frustratingly thin. Neighborhoods were checked again, records re-examined, and occasional sightings were followed up, yet each lead ended in dead ends. Technology improved, but even updated searches yielded nothing significant. Family and friends held on to hope, but with each passing year, the absence became more permanent, the mystery deeper. The unanswered questions grew heavier. Why had he vanished so completely? Was foul play involved, or had some other unforeseen event taken him from the life he had meticulously prepared for? The case lingered, unresolved and haunting, a stark reminder of how suddenly a life can disappear without explanation. The disappearance of Glenn Pennie left a lasting unease in the local community. Neighbors who had known him for years were puzzled and unsettled, unable to reconcile the quiet, cautious man they knew with the sudden vanishing. Conversations in grocery stores, cafes, and along country roads often circled back to his name, as people speculated quietly about what could have happened. Some feared foul play, imagining that someone might have targeted him for his estate or coin collection. Others worried about accidents in the rural landscape, roads, forests, or hidden hazards that could swallow a person without a trace. The uncertainty hung over the area, a shadowy reminder that even in peaceful communities, lives can vanish without warning, leaving neighbors anxious and questions unanswered.
In the years after Glenn's disappearance, his estate faced a slow decline. Without him to manage the properties, houses and land began to fall into disrepair. Roofs leaked, fences weakened, and overgrown fields replaced the carefully tended yards he had maintained. Legal proceedings over the estate dragged on, consuming funds that might otherwise have gone to heirs. Lawyers' fees and court costs gradually eroded the value of the inheritance, including the once prized coin collection. Friends and family watched with frustration as what had been a well-prepared future for Glenn unraveled in his absence. The physical decay of the property mirrored the emotional strain on those connected to him, a silent reminder that his disappearance left consequences beyond just unanswered questions. Even with careful planning, the impact of being gone was profound. Eventually, portions of Glenn's estate were distributed, though the amounts fell far short of what had been anticipated. His daughter received a six-figure sum, a considerable amount, yet far less than the full value of the inheritance Glenn had expected to pass on. Dale, his brother, received $25,000 worth of coins from the collection, a fraction of what the estate once held. Legal fees, ongoing court costs, and the deterioration of the properties had taken a substantial toll. Family members felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that some portion of the estate had finally been settled, frustration that Glenn's careful planning and potential legacy had been diminished. The partial distribution underscored the ripple effects of his disappearance, showing how absence could reshape not only lives, but material wealth. Even after the estate was partially settled, the absence of Glenn Pennie continued to weigh heavily on those who loved him. His daughter and other family members struggled with the uncertainty of what had happened, replaying the last known days and imagining countless scenarios. Friends checked in regularly, offering support, but no conversation could replace his presence. The unanswered questions lingered like a shadow over birthdays, holidays, and quiet weekends, leaving ordinary moments tinged with worry. Each year without news made the absence feel more permanent, yet hope refused to vanish entirely. Grief, frustration, and confusion intertwined, creating a persistent ache. Life went on, but Glenn's disappearance remained an unresolved chapter, a mystery that continued to shape family and community alike.
Since 2007, Glenn Pennie's disappearance has been revisited periodically by a dedicated cold case team. Detectives review old files, re-interview witnesses, and examine evidence with fresh eyes, hoping that new techniques or perspectives might reveal overlooked clues. Each revisit brings a mixture of anticipation and frustration. Every lead that once seemed promising has long since grown cold, yet investigators hold on to the hope that something might finally break the case open. Advances in technology, from improved record searches to forensic methods, are applied whenever possible. Still, year after year, nothing definitive emerges. The reinvestigation serves as a reminder that the case remains open, a puzzle that continues to challenge law enforcement while keeping Glenn's absence painfully present for family and friends. Despite the years of investigation, authorities continue to keep minor leads in mind, aware that even the smallest detail could become significant. A neighbor's vague recollection, a late-night phone call, or a subtle inconsistency in a report might offer a breakthrough if examined carefully. Detectives review maps, check travel logs, and revisit any fragment of information that was previously dismissed as insignificant. The hope is that eventually, something overlooked could connect dots that have remained separate for nearly 2 decades. Each small clue is cataloged, cross-referenced, and stored for future comparison. While nothing so far has revealed Glenn's whereabouts, the persistence of law enforcement reflects a belief that even cold cases can yield answers, and that a single new piece of information could finally illuminate what happened the day Glenn Pennie vanished. Authorities have continued to reach out to the public, urging anyone with information about Glenn Pennie's disappearance to come forward. Flyers, social media posts, and local news coverage keep the story visible, reminding the community that even small memories could be important. Investigators emphasize that no tip is too minor, and that recollections that seemed irrelevant years ago might now shed light on the case. Family and friends also appeal to anyone who might have known something but never spoke up. Law enforcement hopes that someone, perhaps a passerby, a traveler, or a former neighbor, might finally recall a detail that fits into the larger puzzle. The message is clear. Glenn's disappearance remains unresolved, and any piece of information could make the difference in unraveling a mystery that has haunted a community for years. Decades have passed, yet Glenn Pennie's fate remains a mystery, lingering in the minds of those who knew him and in the quiet corners of Polk County. His disappearance intertwines questions of wealth, family tension, and careful planning, yet none of it explains why he vanished without a trace. The estate he hoped to inherit fell into disrepair. Legal wrangling diminished what should have been a sizable legacy, and the coin collection, once a symbol of security, became a reminder of uncertainty. Friends and family continue to grapple with unanswered questions, imagining scenarios that might never be verified. For the community, his story is both a cautionary tale and a haunting puzzle, a life meticulously organized, suddenly gone, leaving only silence and speculation behind.
Even now, the absence echoes, a testament to how quickly certainty can be replaced by the unknown. From a quiet Spokane neighborhood in 1974 to the neon-lit streets of Redding in 2007, and then to rural Oregon in 2004, 3 disappearances stretch across decades and geography. Each case is distinct. Different people, different circumstances, but they share an unsettling similarity. Ordinary lives abruptly interrupted, leaving behind unanswered questions and lingering fear. Families, friends, and communities have all been touched by absence, struggling with uncertainty and replaying the last known moments endlessly. Investigators have searched, followed leads, and applied modern techniques, yet the answers remain elusive. What truly connects these vanishings is unclear, if there is a connection at all. Still, the haunting question persists across time and place. What really happened? If these stories have struck a chord, consider taking a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Every view and share spreads awareness, keeping these disappearances in the public eye. You never know. Someone out there might have the piece of information that finally brings closure to one of these haunting mysteries. Each small action could make a difference.